Hey guys, in this video we're going to be talking about tree diagrams, and this is in terms of probability or statistics. So let's say I have a coin that has heads and tails, and the chance of getting a heads is 50%. Half the time you would get heads, and the other half you would get tails, so 50%. Now, if I were to flip the coin 3 times, what is the probability of getting 3 tails in a row? So that is our question here. So what can I do? Well, I can make this diagram right here. So let me just erase this. So what is the probability of getting 3 tails in a row? Well, it is determined by each flip. So flip 1, I have 2 outcomes. I can have heads or tails. And the chance of getting heads or tails, that's 50%. Each has a chance of 50%. So I'm going to write that down, 50%, and then here 50%. Next we have our second flip, and it can come from either one. It can come from heads or tails. So we're going to ignore the question for a second and just make our tree diagram. So our second flip can come from heads or tails. And now our second flip can now have 2 options, heads and tails, because these are independent events. Flipping a tails here in my first flip is not going to affect my second flip. It's not like I'm going to get another tail. So, and then if I get heads, I can get tails or heads. Again, that is, our outcomes. Now, from each flip, so I can have heads, and then I can have 2 more, or I can have heads, tails, and then either heads or tails. Again, right here, tails, heads, and then again 2 more, heads or tails, and then tails, heads or tails. And that's really what we're trying to show here. You can have a third flip, and then you can each have heads, or heads, tails, and then you have heads, tails, heads. So we have every single outcome here. Heads, tails, tails, heads, tails, tails. And it's not repeating if you notice. Tails, heads, and then finally tails. This process is really efficient, really keeps you organized to make sure you don't repeat a pattern again. So as you can see, for example, this pattern, heads, tails. You don't see that pattern anywhere else, where the first flip is heads, second is tails, and the third is tails. So each flip, I'm going to write this down, each flip has a 50% chance. So flip 1, getting heads and getting tails, that's a 50% chance. It's a fair coin. Flip 2, getting tails again. So let's say I got tails. Let's confirm that here. Say I got tails. And now I go on to my second flip over here and I get tails again. So I got tails again. And what is the chance of getting tails again? Well, again, we have 2 options. So we have 2 options and only one favorable outcome, which is tails. So 1/2. And then here I have, let's say for flip 3, I get tails again, because that's what our question is saying, tails again. Again, my previous flip isn't going to change anything. I'm going to have 2 total outcomes and 1 favorable outcome of tails. So heads, 2, and then 1 tails, which is over here. Okay. Now that we have 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 3 1/2s, all I'm going to do is write a probability statement. Probability of getting 3 tails. So that's kind of saying something like this. Probability of tails, then tails, then tails. Equals, so the probability of the first tails of T1, and then probability times probability of T2 times the probability of T3. So the reason we're multiplying is, remember when we had and, so event A and event B. So, and remember, and is represented as this. So event A, probability of A and B. We have this N, upside down N, that I like to call, or U. And this basically stands for and. We have A and B. We're going to multiply the probability of A with the probability of B. And that's what we're doing here. So probability of T1, my first flip, that's over here, 1/2. So probability of T1, that's going to be 1/2. Probability of T2, flip 2. Second flip, I get 1/2 again. Third, again, 1/2. So therefore, 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 is going to give me my probability. So 1 times 1 times 1 equals 1. And then 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So the probability of getting 3 tails in a row is 1/8. And that's how you would use the tree diagram method to stay organized and figure